This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net. It is time for Avoid the Maze. And Avoid the Maze takes you on a journey. And each journey is different. And oftentimes is not the journey that was planned. And our guest today is Rob White, who has been on a journey. And it sounds like, Rob, you've also been in your own maze of some sort.
Exactly. That's what I share, the maze that I believe, Karen, we get stuck in a maze and you can't get out of the maze. I believe that the harder you try to get out of the maze, the deeper you're stuck in the maze. I believe that when you learn to live in the maze, you're free. And so I'll explain that as we go along in my own life with details of how it's worked for me.
Okay.
And how I think everything I'm saying about me, I'm saying about you and everyone else.
And, oftentimes that's true when we hear somebody else's story. It's like, well, I went down that road. Oh, I remember seeing that. But sometimes we don't see it in the same way. So it's nice to learn how others have seen it. So maybe the next time we approach that same intersection, maybe we can make better choices or different choices.
I found, Karen, that we learn a lot more when people share their lives. I call that being generous. When people, I don't mean when they share their soap opera, that's just getting caught in the maze.
Right.
But when people share their lives from a transparency and authenticity, if we ask, what's this got to do with me? We're going to find it has a lot to do with me. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I've learned a lot about myself since we started doing this series. And, it's very refreshing because there are many days, the things that I learn, I say to myself, you know what? I'm okay. I'm okay. Other people, face these same things. It's not just me. And there are other things I, scratch my head and I go, why did I go down that path? Well, maybe it was the right path at the time. So, as I said before we went live, I was reading something online and it says that you heard the word no, and none of us like the word no. I mean, the word no is we get our back up. It's like, wait a second, why? But you said you heard the word no, and the next thing you knew, an unwanted mental house guest took first place. What does that mean?
Well, hearing the word no, at age 2, the terrible twos. They're terrible not for mom and dad. They were terrible for me and for you. Between age 2 and 5, child psychologists say we hear 60,000 no's.
Wow.
Well, by age 5, I have pieced together, and I am put together an identity that thinks there's something wrong out there and there's something wrong with me. I mean, how can you hear 60,000 no's without thinking there's got to be something wrong?
Sure.
So what I believe happened to me, what I did was we all want to fit in. So we try to come up with an act, I'll say, because we don't know who we are. We were trying to explore who we were. And every time I pulled the cat's tail, Dad screamed no. I don't know why. I didn't see any problem there. When I put my little sailboat in the toilet, Mom screamed no. In the water. I don't know why that was a problem. So eventually I got, there's something wrong with me. Now I didn't get it intellectually. I wasn't smart enough, but I got it psychologically.
Sure.
So what I learned is I spent the rest of my life trying to compensate for there's something wrong with me. So it started out in my teen years. By age 12, I was a flippant kid, a wise guy, a know-it-all, a tough character. So how I dealt with there's something wrong with me is don't mess with me. And then I said something at age 15 to the principal of the high school. I was born in a small mill town on the wrong side of the tracks. meaning it was an impoverished town anyways, with a lot of naysaying in the conversation, poor me, damn you. And I was born on the side of the tracks where you had a lot of alcohol and anger and fighting going on. So the principal, I said something snip and funny, and in the cafeteria, and everyone laughed, and he got angry, rightfully. And he took me in his office and he said, you know, Bobby, that's what they called me back then. It's small school. It's interesting about you. You're a winner, but I think you're going to win it losing. And like that, wow, I never heard anyone say anything like that. And I didn't think you could win at losing. And he said, yeah, you'll end up working at the local mill, drinking yourself into oblivion every weekend and whining with all the other cronies down there if you keep going the way you're going. Well, I got angry at him, but I also heard there was something going on there in this conversation I should pay attention to. That's when I decided to go to college because I was smart enough, but I wasn't smart enough. So at that point, I went into the guidance council. I had some conversations and realized I did want to go to college. So I started working hard at junior and senior year, good, decent grades, and got it first kid in my family to go to college. Now I want you to get, in order to go to college, I had to die of who I was. Who I was is I'm a tough guy. Don't mess around with me. And I have all the answers. And I had to be willing to open to the possibility. I'm curious. I really would like to learn more about life and myself. It's not easy to do that because you see, those 60,000 no's that I heard convinced me to put on an act to survive in life because there's something wrong out there. I'm just going to try to get through it. I had to trust there isn't anything wrong out there. There's a lot of right out there. And the principal was one of the rightnesses, and the guidance counselor who was willing to put up with my stupidness and help me to see my smartness, if I may. When I got to college, it was a whole different universe for me. I was born in a small mill town, never went outside of the town. I didn't know that there were different ethnic cultures or races, any of that. Everybody was just the same kind of person in my little mill town. It was I was on another planet, and it threw me for a loop. And that's the naysaying voice. Those no's came back. I found myself getting flippant. I found myself becoming a wise guy, and don't mess with me. That I am that I created to protect myself. That's the naysaying voice that took up camp in my consciousness. It never leaves. So I had to realize I'm dealing with two me's here. One who's curious, ambitious, and wants to get on in life, and one who's angry, resentful, and wants to push people around in life to survive. And as a result, I actually cheated in my in an English test because I was back to I'll figure out how to get around this without studying. So I cheated. I had crib sheets, and the professor caught me. And he brought me in and he said, this is grounds to, you'll flunk this course, but back then they could even throw you right out.
Right.
So he said, it's interesting. I'm going to ask you the questions on the test verbally. I want to hear your answers when you can't cheat. So I gave him the answers. He said, clearly you're intelligent. You just don't study. What do you do with your time? And I said, I'm busy. He said, yeah, what are you busy doing? Well, I was busy being a wise guy. I mean, it takes a lot of work to be a wise guy. So my point being, this is life, the rightness of life. Every day, unassuming, ordinary gurus, I call them, who come your way to put you back on track, if you're willing to listen. So my whole life went from being on the wrong side of the tracks in an alcoholic neighborhood, fraught with thoughts of no about everything, and being willing to push and fight with everyone, claw my way to whatever top I thought there was a top, to now being a very, very successful entrepreneur in real estate and restaurants. I started 17 years, by the way, as a school teacher.
Wow.
When I finished college, I went to the big city of Boston. I'd never been there, by myself in a car that I bought my senior year, scared, didn't know anyone, didn't know where I was even going to live. Uh, Matter of fact, I had to live across the street from the Prudential Center. Back then, there were the three-family homes there. Now it's not like that at all. Because that way, if I got lost in the city, I could look up at the big Prudential Tower and find my way back.
I
I mean,
love it.
that's,
I love it.
yeah,
Yeah.
logical Bobby. Yeah. So what I learned from my many journeys here, and I've been here 78 years, but I feel 58, um, is that there are two of me. And there's the me that I put together in reaction to the 60,000 no's. And that's not me, but I was convinced it was me. So I was who I wasn't to hide what I thought was I'm flawed, which was a lie. So here I got a whole act going, being someone I'm not, to cover up I'm flawed. I must be. How can no? How can I hear 60,000 notes and not be flawed? There's something wrong with me. And then there's this other I am. That's the I call it the maestro in my book, the Maestro Monologue. That's the I. That's the I am I was born to be. A maestro is a big orchestra conductor.
Right.
I was here to conduct my own life and my daily affairs and orchestrate my life as I wanted it to be. When I started with walking and talking, and even reading and writing, I wasn't I wasn't affected by the no's. That's why we take care of those big four before we're 40. If we try to take on walking, talking, reading, and writing at 40, it's not happening. We got all the reasons why it won't happen. So I didn't have any reasons before I heard the no. See, I had no reasons to fail until I heard the no's. Then I had plenty of reasons. And I thought they were good reasons. I'm flawed. I didn't know the word I'm flawed. I felt the word I'm flawed. So the reason I'm out there now sharing with the likes of you, Karen, nice person you are, I look in your eyes, is I'm wanting everyone to get, I love to avoid the maze. You see, I'm saying the maze is the 60,000 no's. I'm saying every human being agrees before they get here that they're going to get caught in the maze. Every parent, they can, no matter how loving and kind and gentle, they can say no. I mean, after 1,000 no's, you begin to think there's something wrong with me here.
Absolutely. Right.
And so I claim you never get out of the maze. By that, I mean this, that I don't think the myth absolute bliss and fear of the maze ever happens. I think you learn to live with the maze. See, I'm now 78. I've been around. If someone cuts me off and toots their horn at me, I see the wise guy Bobby show up, and I'll bang the steering wheel and hit the horn back. Oh, and there he is. There's wise guy Bobby. He now the difference is I catch him in his act before he takes me over. Some people never care. You know, my dad, I loved him dearly. Of course, he's not around anymore. He was born in the ghettos of the city, and his whole life was about trying to just make it, not get taken advantage. Don't try to con me. That was his gig. Don't con me. That was his whole gig. And it's a shame he never got, that's not who you are, Dad. It's not, you're not, don't con me. You're an infinite possibility, but you can't see possibility when you're coming from, don't con me. So when you're caught in the maze, you're always in the maze. That other unwanted mental house guest is always ready to jump in when you're feeling down and have you get defensive, angry, go into victim mode, whatever it might be. Our job is to catch it. And what I do, Karen, I say, oh, you're good. You're good. Boy, any opportunity, you jump in, and you are very good at taking me over. By simply acknowledging I'm caught in it, I create space, a pattern, interrupt if I may, to let it go, to get off it. Now, so, and I constantly, even now, when something happens, someone says something maybe rude, and I find myself quickly, I have that angry face and I'm ready to come back at him with some snip statement. I will say, whoa, you're good, but I'll stop myself before I let it the other self, the unwanted mental house guest, filled with howling no's from age. By the way, those howling no's from age 2 to 5 stay with you your entire lifetime.
Oh, they sure do. Yes.
So, I mean, that's and I'll tell you where another story. I lived with a Maasai tribe for 6 weeks. I found incredible integrity there. They don't know how to lie. They don't know how to lie. Truth, they're depending on truth to live. They don't have the leisure to come up with stories, lies. And they always just speak from their reality. And no one takes themselves so personally like a more civilized country we do. And they get there's two of them. They get there's a Maasai warrior, which I call the maestro, and they get there's that flawed side of them because they heard no's too when they were children, when they were playing with a spider. Oh no, no, don't touch that spider; it'll kill you. A poison spider. Bad boy, bad girl. You know that's the other thing. We don't just hear no. Then we hear you're a bad boy. Go to your room. Wow, wow.
Yep.
When I heard you're a bad boy, first time, it's a break from belonging. Till then, I was part of the family. Oh man, this is beautiful. Then I got slapped in my hand, bad boy. I mean, it's like throwing you into the woods all by yourself. I noticed with the Maasai that it's a natural thing. Anytime they say no, they hug you immediately after. It's just, mommy says, no, 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 don't do that. Give me a big hug. Oh my goodness, what did you do? Give me a big hug. Now they don't speak English. I had an interpreter to help me. And so that was huge for me. The more evolved into civilization we get, it seems the more complex our personality gets. You know what I found? We haven't evolved beyond human beings 6,000 years ago. We're still, technologically, we certainly have, and all that stuff. But psychologically, we're still stuck. And I think that's why I'm not speaking religiously, but I think the Bible and other religious books are trying to help us to see how we're stuck. So it's not new. I think evolution is a matter of trying to unstick oneself. Me from being a wise guy, flippant. I would have been good at selling, I would have sold something where if it was fraud, I would convince you it wasn't fraud. I would not own, and I would be happy that I conned you. I mean, my God, that was my philosophy. When I sold my bike to Freddie Blanchard, my mother made me give him his $5 back. There were no brakes on it, and I didn't tell him that. You couldn't if you tried to. So my mom said, "You can't do that." I didn't know you couldn't do it. I thought you could do that. I was 7, so I'd already come up with a scheme. So I find that the more primitive cultures, what I learned, they don't come up with schemes. They're busy living. They want to see reality so they can have they can live. I mean, they got hyenas and things like prowling. We have so much time, we destroy our lives because we think we're flawed and we come up with a scheme to deal with it. Yeah. So that's pretty much, so I went from being broke to being worth tens of millions of dollars. So in money as a measure, I figured out you didn't have to come up with a scheme if you gave a good product. If you actually were interested in have people enjoy buying what they're buying from you. So that was right there was a flip. I went from having no friends. Oh, I had people to hang around with, but we couldn't trust each other. And to having intimate friends. I went from fear to love, if I might be so poetic. Not always. I can follow. COVID is a wonderful example, Karen, of life showing us what a mess we are.
Absolutely.
If she throws us a little curveball. There's the 60,000 no's. That one curveball is 60,000 no's that we're running around like Chicken Little with our heads cut off, afraid the sky's going to fall down, hating each other, fighting with each other instead of embracing and working harder at getting. So I think COVID is a good example of the maze, and it threw everyone deep in the center of the maze. I got news for you. We're not doing a good job.
No, we're
getting
not.
out of the maze. I mean, I'm not
Right.
even saying about do a good job getting rid of COVID, just getting rid of the maze psychologically, the venom, the hate, the disdain. So that's all no, 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 and no from when you were 2 to 5, showing up in your life now, howling, echoing no's from the past. Yeah.
Well, I find this interesting because prior to recording this show today, I did another show with somebody totally different than you. And the big thing that we talked about is these voices that keep repeating themselves in our head, which are part of these no's. Um, you know, I I thought for a good majority of my life, I knew my mother loved me, but I thought we had a love-hate relationship because my mother was always what I thought correcting me. Okay. That's what I heard. Why are you wearing that sweater? Why do you wear that color? You don't know how to do this, and on and on and on. For some reason, I don't remember any of the, hey, that looks good on you, or you did a good job. And 6 years ago, my mother had a stroke, and the doctors told us she's going to live a day or she's going to live years. We don't know. But she went blind. She had no idea she was blind. I moved in with her to help take care of her. That's when I realized my mother and I did not have a love-hate relationship. We had a great relationship because all those voices that I had been hearing up until then started to change because I became intentional with her. I started to understand. And so now hearing you talk about these no's, that has to be overwhelming for all of us. And if we don't understand it, it can destroy us.
Boy, you told that story wonderfully. I love the part you said where you could remember all the no's. You look awful in that. What would you do that for? And you couldn't remember any yeses. That's because the no's, though, that's the naysaying, those howling no's, I call them, that naysaying voice, gives you amnesia to the yeses. And then when you had the opportunity to see your mom differently, you realize you really came from I love you, and she came from I love you, which is what we come from. That's what we come from. The I hate you or any variance of that, that's all a product of the no's. And the fact that you then created a whole new relationship. Is your mom still alive?
No, she passed 2.5 months after that.
Um, and now when you say she was blind and didn't know it, what did you mean by that?
So her stroke convinced her that she could see, but she couldn't.
Um,
Doctors knew she couldn't, and they knew it within hours of her having the stroke. But what was interesting was she acted like she could see you. A couple of times she actually described what I was wearing, and we all got like all excited, like, wow. But she really didn't know. And we realized that in the next conversation that she would have, she would look at me and she'd look to another direction to look at me, and she'd say, where did you go? And I'd say, I'm still here. And that's when she would be confused and be like, no, you're really not here. You must have walked out of the room. But it was that time period where she was willing to communicate with me, and I was communicating with her differently as well. And that's what I'm hearing sort of happen with you and the principal. Once the principal started communicating with you, which it sounds like a lot of people really didn't, they just let you be that wise guy, Bobby. Yeah. But once he communicated, you learned how to communicate differently and hear differently.
That's very nice. Yeah, very well said. You see, we're born into a conversation. My conversation in the household I was born in, on the wrong side of the tracks in a small mill town that was impoverished anyways, was really always about someone's trying to take advantage of you, because we didn't have enough money. So that seemed to be what mom and dad came to. Even the bread man We had a bread man. That's how you got your milk and bread. That's how
Yeah.
old I was. I am. He come in a truck. What do you mean he charged you a nickel for the bread? It's not a nickel. It's 4 cents. He took everything was take advantage of you. So I was brought into a conversation. Everyone's trying to take advantage of you. Watch out. The principal came from a conversation. I think you're an intelligent, ambitious young lad that could go somewhere. I didn't know that conversation existed. It's like, wow, do you mean that I could live in a conversation called I'm intelligent and ambitious and I could go somewhere? So you're right. And in that moment, the howling no's start to subside. They don't go away entirely because there are things out there that trigger a memory back when you were
Absolutely.
4, and there you are stuck 4 again. But I now was no longer, now that naysaying voice didn't have first place position. When I said it did, up to age 12, 13, 14, it was running the show. And if the principal, isn't it interesting? We don't say it this way. If the principal said, I'm going to introduce you to a different conversation that you might want to listen to, and you might want to speak and live from it, because that's what he did. And that's what we do. That's what inspirational speakers help us to do. Your mom came from a different conversation about you after her stroke.
Right.
She let go of the story she had. You let go of the story you had. And you both decided, let's start anew. We'll create a new conversation called I Love You. Let's see what we can explore in this relationship. Something like that you did.
Right.
In order for you to grow so much. So it's strange, but out of our biggest griefs and adversities come our greatest growth and spirits and treasures, like you learning how much you truly love your mom. You know,
Absolutely.
I'm very impressed with you. You used that moment not for being a, oh my God, what's going on here, poor us, look at mom. And maybe that shows up because it shows up, but you realize there was an opportunity here for some real love and sharing and caring. And there's the blessing. See, there is no curse without a blessing. That's in a world of polarity. Even with this COVID, maybe we don't see it yet. And when we look back, there's an incredible blessing. I hope we find it. I would hate to think it comes and goes, we don't find it. The blessing for me with COVID is when I hear people fall into their poor me about it and tell me all the reasons why it's the worst thing that ever happened to them. And it could be. The blessing for me is I'm a listener now. I will listen. In the past, I wouldn't. I would immediately say, well, you just got to toughen up. Oh, for God's sakes, don't be such a big crybaby. I get that's not where they're coming from. So I'll just be with them and let them be who they're being. You see, Karen, what makes human being a wonderful journey is if I let you be who you choose to be. And if
Absolutely.
you ask me for some advice, if you say, Rob, let me ask you a question. I'm always arguing with my mother, and you ask for advice, and then I would share some. But I got to allow you to be who you choose to be. Otherwise, if I'm insisting you be who I want you to be, we don't have a relationship. We have a dominating, avoid domination interaction going. I'm trying to dominate you, and yet. So what I have found in my relationships, everyone's growing and making mistakes. Part of being human is part of being making mistakes. I call them mistakes, MISS dash takes. We take a take at something, we miss the mark. We're supposed to look at it, learn from it, do a retake, and when we succeed, pick up the megaphone like the Hollywood director and say, "That's a take."
Yep.
You see, and that's where your softness, your listening, your sharing with your Avoid the Maze program is allowing people to be who they are and offering the opportunity. What if there's a whole lot more to you than you even realize? That's all. What if there's possibility you can't see? You're so stuck in the mud. And that's all it really is. Our whole life is that, Karen. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting as we share our life stories. Um, when I decided to do Avoid the Maze, initially it was a selfish reason. My selfish reason was um, I wanted to become a better person. And if I only lived within myself, I'm not going to learn. and I needed to learn. I needed to see. And again, so many things have been happening in our world politically, COVID as well. It's like the opposite is not necessarily terrible people. They have different thoughts, different viewpoints. They hear it differently than I. I want to be able to hear what they're saying. And there has to be a way. I still want to believe it. There has to be a way for us to come together and accept our differences and learn from each other. Because obviously, that's what happened for you. You know, you were stepped into a new conversation, started meeting new people, started doing new things, and yet you still went home to your family that knew, the Bobby that you were.
That's a beauty. For our biggest challenges when we decide to be an I am that we weren't is family and friends insist you be who you were, even if you don't want to be who you were.
Right.
They've learned to relate to you that way, and they'll be darned if they're going to let you just let go. It's strange that your closest friends and family are the biggest challenges to your freedom. One last thing, and I see we're running out of time. I love you brought up. You see, I say there's no I there. That's why you say my body, because you're not your body. Who's the I am that's saying my body? I say that we are a open space for expressing myriad ways of being. And if I see you as being one way that I don't like, I don't hate you because I get that's not you. That's just a way of being your being. So if the Dems and the Republicans, if they saw that each side just has a different belief system, and if we were willing to accept that it's a belief system only, it's not them. We don't have to cancel them. We don't have to hate them. We can just know they're certainly thinking in a different. If we even dare to say, "Wow, I don't see it that way at all." Could we have a conversation? If I can share my point of view and you help me to explore it, I'm willing to hear your point and explore. But you see, we see each other as solid, rock high. So you're a wise guy, Bobby. You're going nowhere. If that's what the principal said, wow, I suspect I'd be working. Yeah, I'd probably be dead from alcoholism by now, but I would have worked in a local factory and been angry my whole life. He saw my way of being as a way of being that doesn't work, and he offered me another way. What if you decided to? What if the way you were going to be was ambitious and curious and insightful? Yeah. And so I see what your way of being with mom after mom's stroke. It was a different way of being, and mom's way of being with you. The I am that is expressing is nothing solid. You can't point at it. Isn't that interesting?
Absolutely.
So you
Absolutely.
see, low self-esteem, I can't have low self-esteem if there's no me. What I do get is the way I'm acting doesn't work, and I might want to change it. But if I think that's all there is, wise guy Bobby, then I could never have changed, and I'd have gone to my death probably at age 75 a few years ago from alcohol and smoking like Dad did, because I wouldn't have known that's not me. It's a way I'm expressing, and it doesn't feel very good. So that's beautiful what you just said. I like your way of saying things. Thank you.
Well, I really have appreciated you. How can our listeners find you out there?
Well, they can come to my first of all, I have a new book out called The Maestro Monologue, which talks about what we're talking about.
Okay.
And then they can find me on at Rob White Media on Twitter. All right, robwhitemedia.com is my website. Yeah.
Well, I sure hope that our listeners will follow you. You've been insightful. We'll have to have you back on because there's a lot more to this conversation
Oh, yeah.
than we just did in the last 30 minutes. But thank you so very, very much. And have a great new year.
Well, Happy New Year. You're a beauty. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care
Bye-bye.
now. Bye bye.